Coogs House. All right. So the Houston Cougar defense is also going through their own transfer portal journey of sorts, and it's going a little bit differently than advertised. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater came to step by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That way you get the latest on the Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Welcome back to the YouTube channel every day. We're happy to see you again. I remember we're approaching 1,050 subscribers. We're doing our next giveaway at 1,250. We're doing one of these every 250 subscribers, and the big mile markers, the thousands or whatever, those are going to be a little bigger deals. So to be entered in the giveaway, we have to A, get there, so hit subscribe down below, and B, be commenting and liking on the video. Now, if you're more of an offensive guy, and I might be one of those myself, gasp. If you're more of an offensive guy and today's defensive talk is just too much for you, and you're like, I don't want to talk about any of this, in the comments, tell me with your cereal, do you go cereal first or milk first? One of these answers is wrong. All right, so I have to get into a couple things on the defensive roster turning over and how Houston has used the transfer portal to effectively do good things to the defense. Obviously, Houston's defense last year had moments where it looked really good, like East Carolina, moments where it looked like, Kansas was doing very well at the time when Kansas did their things to it. I think that it also, though, had times where it left us all like, were they even there? Like when they gave up 77 points to SMU, right? So, like, we have to talk some about them. I want to talk some of the first bit about what is happening with that roster. So key departures via NFL draft, key departure. The defense that gave up 77 guys has several people in the NFL draft. Trust me. And key departures are just mentioning the departures into the transfer portal. In the second segment, I talk about the guys that Houston already has in, because unlike yesterday's show, every day, you remember yesterday we did this kind of system with the offensive line. Unlike yesterday's show, they've already brought in a decent amount of guys in the transfer portal to kind of replace some of these holes. And then that third segment, I'm going to do a look at who is left in the transfer portal to bring in some guys, because they don't quite need as many people because they already got some. We just didn't have the spring game to get to break those guys down on tape. So let's look at the roster first. In total, right, in spring football practice, they had 10 linebackers, 16 D linemen, 16 DBs. Last year in the fall, they had 13 linebackers, 20 defensive linemen, 21 DBs. Now, that's actually not that crazy far off of one another when you factor in there are a bunch of high school recruits that come in and kind of fill in some of the just raw base number of practice guys, if they're not impact freshmen, as early as June, right? They just got to finish out their senior of high school. But it's also clearly they have room to grow. They have room to plug some holes in. Even all of the recruited kids out of high school coming in would not fill in all of those spots. The most notable loss in the whole bit here is Derek Parrish. It's hard to really think about that because of how much of last season he missed injured, right? But for what it's worth, I believe it was through the end of the regular season, he still led the team in tackles for loss after only playing the first few games, right? I mean, Derek Parrish was an impact defensive player and frankly had as impressive a pro day as you'll see across all of college football with an incredibly, his shuttle time was faster than almost every wide receiver at the combine. He created a vertical jump, broad jump. He played tight end, fullback, and D-line. I mean, he is truly a pro's pro trying to find a spot at kind of an awkward. He's not quite a big guy, but also he has like his best attributes are his strength. He's not like a little nimble guy either. So, he's figuring that out. Anyway, I hope Derek Parrish gets drafted. And when he is, following the draft, we'd probably do something on him because he's a Coug for life, but also like embodies a lot of the positives of this program. He's not the only guy, though. Donovan Mooten, right? Linebacker, kind of a vocal leader on the defense last year, is heading to the NFL draft. Elias Bell and D'Anthony Jones both of those guys, I don't mean to mention them completely in tandem. That almost feels like I'm selling them short. But as a pair of pass rushers after Derek Parrish's injury, they had some of the highest PFF grades as a duo across the country. And obviously they had guys spelling them like Nelson Caesar and stuff like that. But they, for what it's worth, like they were very talented, did very well in American Athletic Conference play. I'd be interested to see what position NFL teams look at D'Anthony Jones as. He's kind of a tweener, 3 technique, 5 technique, 9 technique to me. Like I see him playing a little bit of both, or a little bit of all 3, I should say. Elias Bell, I see more as the 3 technique, 5 technique kind of guy, maybe a head up 4-4-eye. If you're not into football terminology, the higher the number, the farther you're moving away from the center is the simplest way I can think to put that. So like a 0 is head up nose tackle, right? A 3 is like a defensive lineman that lines up on the shade of the guard. A 4 would be head up on the tackle. 5 just outside the tackle. 9 like the wide Von Miller style pass rush guy. The further out, right? Further you go. So I would think that Elias Bell is kind of in that 4, 5, maybe even a 3 type position as far as where he lines up on the defensive line. So gets called more like a defensive tackle a lot of times. But D'Anthony Jones, I could see him playing a lot of different spots, and it just kind of depends where he settles and what kind of defense they run. We also lost some guys in the back half. Javarius Owens was a combine guy. Looks like he may be a late round draft pick. Jace Rogers, Art Green, and Thabo Mwaniki are all into the draft and not. And I think they've each got highlight tapes that would put them in the NFL. As far as game tapes go, it's going to depend on what games people focus on. I do think, though, there were flashes from each one of them that are encouraging to me. I think that if you were to tell me 2 of those 3 guys are in the pros for a handful of years, it would not surprise me. I don't know how to tell you which one to pick. With that said, though, Houston also lost, 6 guys in the transfer portal. And while we want to bid adieu to the guys that are going to the NFL, the transfer portal guys almost felt like they were worried about minutes, or worried about snaps, I should say. One of which is an interesting thing to see. Manny Nunnery is transferred out of University of Houston and notably transferred to Florida. He really was kind of a rotational linebacker at Houston. And then as a redshirt freshman, he was a special teams guy. But he's looking like he's going to go play safety at Florida. And so, to be fair, he was a 3-star DB out of high school. And I guess he played a lot of positions in high school. It's high school football. And he's a D1 athlete. But I'm intrigued by that. And I almost, first of all these guys, I always wish them the best because there's no point not. And B, I'm interested to see how that works for him because I kind of thought as a coverage linebacker, he is kind of in a good spot to play eventually at Houston. And so that he's going to go be more of what I assume is a box safety. So the difference being he's not like a deep center field type safety. I'll be interested to see how that goes for him. And best of luck. Again, no hard feelings. I thought he had a good position here if he just continued to grow into it. The latest and oddest, latest of the oddest is Abdul Latif Adu. He's a DB, was a JUCO guy originally. He did just start 1 game last year, but played a good chunk of snaps as a rotational guy as well. His start was Tulane, and so they tried to pick on him a little bit, but he did have 7 solo tackles, back and forth there. I thought he had a chance of growing something special at Houston, but I guess not. Mark Wilson's another DB into the transfer portal. He entered further back. He was a 3-star DB from Clear Lake, and he was just a redshirt freshman last year. And this feels like the kind of thing where guys jump ship early because everyone saw him as a Power 5 talent. He had offers from Arkansas, Baylor, Vanderbilt, etc. At high school, he chose Houston, and it felt kind of like, okay, he's going to redshirt freshman, and then by his redshirt sophomore year, which is next year, right? He'd be that Power 5 guy on Houston as a Power 5 team. And so while I have not seen his commitment, so if you've got it down below, it's just not on a database and I can't find on socials, let me know because I'm interested to see where he goes. I think that he will develop into a solid DB somewhere. I just kind of thought it was here. The fun guy to watch in this journey, though, is going to be Rafal Szymanski. He was a defensive lineman at Houston, a JUCO guy from New Mexico Military Academy, but more famously, probably he's the Polish kid, big, strong Polish kid, but not played a whole lot of football. And his offers coming out of Houston as in the transfer portal he's posted are Northwestern State, Mississippi Valley State. So smaller programs we can get to play some. You can't hate on a kid for trying to go get to play somewhere. I mean, getting to play some is a whole different experience than being a rotational or backup guy on a Power 5 team, right? So power to him there. Theron Stroops, he appears to be headed to Valdosta State, another DB. Did not list a snap in his 3 seasons on campus in Houston. So going somewhere, it looks like, again, he can play. DeMarcus Griffin-Taylor, DB, appears to be headed to Louisiana Tech. Was not on campus in Houston very long, but because he spent some JUCO time at Independence College in Kansas, Community College in Kansas, he also didn't have a whole lot of eligibility left. He did play in all 13 games last year, but it was only a 16 tackles guy. It was a lot of special teams reps and a lot of late game blowout type reps, like late game ECU kind of stuff. And anyway, I do think he would have had more of an impact next season than last season, much like all these guys. They'd stick around, right? Another year in the system, another year in the program, another year for Doug Belk, defense coordinator, right? But he's not a guy I'm beating myself up about. I want to talk about the guys that we're bringing in to replace these guys because I'm really, really excited about them, and I'm excited to give them their whole segment in the second segment. But first, I got to talk to you guys some about FanDuel. Now, FanDuel, as you know, because you're an everyday listener, is America's #1 sports book, and it is time for, yes, grand slams, no hitters, double plays. There's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just to go to FanDuel.com/locked-on to sign up, place your bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. That's pretty safe because my bet yesterday was a little off. Now, I was right on Monday, wrong on Tuesday, so flipping that coin. We're back to being right on Wednesday. I'm still taking the Astros to win the series, right? It's 1-1 right now, rubber match on Wednesday over the Blue Jays. Certainly at plus 1.5, I say that, maybe make it a 1-run game, right? It's, again, at home. Things are off. It looks like Jordan rolled his ankle, and obviously Altuve is not back, blah, 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 blah. One thing I will say is the Houston's going to have a chance in this game. Because of the pitching woes thus far this season, it feels like you're going to have to hit that over on the over-under being set at 9. And so I'm going to hammer that as well because I get one or the other or both. Don't miss your chance to get a sweat first bet up to $1,000. Go to FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/locked-on to sign up. FanDuel, an official sports partner of Major League Baseball. All right, so I said I want to talk some about these transfers in, and there are 10 guys, and I am really, really excited. I feel like more or less all of them could play an impact role right away. I'm going to kind of start close to the football and work out. And while no one's replacing Dot Nwankwo at nose tackle, the next closest guy may be a kid named Jalen Hunt. He is a defensive lineman from Michigan State that showed up as an edge rusher and has worked his way into, again, a 3 technique. So again, working away, he's shaded up on the guard. He is listed at 6'3", 315 some places, 290 some places, 300 some places. Big dude. Just understand that this is a big, strong kid, but has hands techniques like a defensive edge guy. Because again, that's his forte and where he started playing football at. That's still kind of in his MO and in his style. I was impressed by his hands and feet in watching stuff of him in his limited film from Michigan State. Comes to Houston trying to get to play some more, and moving Big 12 is kind of a big deal, right? Really, really impressed by him. Brandon Mack is another defensive lineman, but he's going to be more on the edge. He comes from Ole Miss. Now, he was a big-time recruit, got to Ole Miss, has not gotten to play much. Frankly, did pretty well in their 2022 spring game, and then didn't get to play much in 2022. And so I think that's probably why he's I'm out, right? I'm excited about him. He's a long-arm kid, big, strong kid, a very talented pass rusher for sure. Perhaps the guy that's the most film on is David Agwegbu, but it's not going to be film that's going to necessarily help you understand what he's going to bring to Houston because he's transferring from Oklahoma, and he was a linebacker at Oklahoma and is coming to Houston to play on the edge, to be a pass rushing specialist. He is a crazy, this does carry over, crazy high motor kid. I mean, he is all over the field, trying to make deflections, trying to get in the passing windows as a linebacker. He is a high effort, high motor kid. I'm really excited about seeing, especially when it's all tuned into you just got to rush the passer. And they rotate those guys. You've seen Coach Bryant early turn those guys up. I'm excited about him a lot. He's one of the guys that Dana Holgorsen, he's not typically a very excited, upbeat kind of guy. And in media availability, he was like, "Oh, but David showed out, right?" He was excited about Igwegbu, and I'm excited about him too. And he's a Big 12 guy. He's moving in the Big 12. He understands the game, understands the speed, understands the pace, understands the physicality. I'm really high on him. Similarly, in moving to the next level back, I'm excited about a kid named Ish Harris out of A&M. He did not play for them in 2022. But again, if you go back and find the 2022 spring game from a year ago, he actually, in a game where there were a lot of touchdowns scored, was a fairly impactful linebacker on the Maroon team for Texas A&M. He forced a turnover. I think he forced 2 turnovers. I thought he looked good in coverage. I'm excited to see what his impact is in Houston. I can't tell based on that film if he's going to be better as a box linebacker or an outside the box linebacker. So, in coverage or in the run game, lined up, obviously play whichever they do. But so again, if we'd had a spring game, I would get to see that. But I'm excited about him some. The the 2 DBs that are kind of stealing headlines as far as transfer guys into Houston are Isaiah Hamilton, the Texas Southern, just across the street transfer. There were people buzzing about him after each individual practice that media got to hear from people at. He is a experienced DB from, again, just across the street, but he also it's a very competitive kid. So Houston's got an immense amount of talent wide receiver. It'll be a constant talking point throughout all the 2023 season. I mean, I feel like I can very confidently say you can at least pick 2 or 3 pros off of our wide receiver roster in the 2023 season, right? Confidently. I'll say 3. I confidently feel like there'll be 3. Okay. He's not backing down from none of them. And that's a big, big deal for you want corner to the shortest memory and the highest confidence, because that's so, so important, because every time you get beat, it's touchdown. So you got to think about it I'm never getting beat, and that's a big thing for him. I also like what I'm hearing about Adoree Halsey, AJ Halsey. He was a guy that had a giant freshman year in New Mexico, right? Transfers into Houston. One of the highest Pro Football Focus grades of all freshman DBs in college football at any school, any division, anything, right? Coming to Houston's a big deal for him, moving up in the world. It's also nice to have him as a flexible coverage, safety, and corner type. We'll be interested to see where they line him up again. Didn't get to see him in the spring game, but things are exciting. And he and Isaiah both had a lot of hubbub or people talking about him over the course of the spring. So that's exciting. A guy that may be a familiar name if you're paying attention to other rosters in the American Athletic Conference was Malik Fleming, grad transfer from East Carolina, started for his last 2 seasons there, so he's got 1 more season left to play. Had really good stats on Pro Football Focus as far as right place, right time kind of stuff. I go to that for a DB when I don't know, because I don't necessarily see a whole, if you're watching game tape, DBs disappear fairly quickly unless they're getting thrown on, and he isn't thrown on a lot. So he doesn't have the deflections, pass breakups, etc. But for a DB, I think that can be a good thing, right? That means you're covering someone so well, they can't throw it to him. And so that's when I go to Pro Football Focus, and he's in the right place, right time a lot. Juwan Gaston is another DB coming in. Now, this kid was originally, he committed on signing day, actually. And I have him listed as a transfer guy. He's coming from a JUCO, so some people would call that a more traditional recruiting process. But he was actually at Auburn committed to high school, and then I believe was some academic stuff. He had to go get that figured out in community college. Coming to Houston, was a 4-star junior college kid, high upside there. We got him for a couple of years, so I don't know how early on you see him in action, but I do feel fairly confident that he will impact things in the right way. And then Brian George is a guy, Texas A&M transfer, big time kid. He started a couple games each year while he was at A&M. but wasn't a full-time guy. And frankly, some of the games they didn't get in at all. And so it'll be interesting to see what he does in the back half of the defense in Houston. He's a guy that I'm watching the stuff I can find from him from A&M. I can't tell who's a corner or safety. What I will say, though, is he's another guy with experience playing at a high level of football in the SEC. And I think, if anything, as you move into the Power 5, it's going to be good to have those guys just in the locker room, because DBs have to study tape in a way where they understand what the other teams are doing, and having a veteran behind you is a big, big deal. Now, in the third segment, I did say I wanted to talk some about more transfers in. I think there's probably still a couple more spots you could look to fill up. So let's get into it. Obviously, I'm going to go with Pie in Sky guys first, and the biggest of big pies in the sky would be Georgia defensive tackle under the transfer portal, Bear Alexander, 6'3", 315, was a rotational guy as a young guy on national champion team that dominated the national championship game itself. He's from Denton, Texas, and so I think there's a lot of consensus that like he may actually go to TCU in the DFW area or whatever, but push that to the side. The kid's from Texas. Dana, you got to get an offer on this guy's table and like make him turn you down, right? Because he is the premier transfer prospect in college football. He is from Texas. You're in Texas. Like this feels like you just got to throw him one. He's projected to be a first-round pick in 2026. He shocked a lot of people by entering the transfer portal at all. I would feel very confident and comfortable offering him a spot. Another guy that I feel like is fairly highly rated, but might be more familiar name from the American Athletic Conference, is Jaheim Thomas, who's at Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati was the same kind of thing. First of all, they were in the college football playoff just 2 years ago, but they're moving up in the world like Houston is. He's a 6'3", 215-pound linebacker. He's a great pass rushing linebacker, plays run pretty well as well. He's what I'd call a box linebacker. So when I think of like the tackle box, he's in there playing the run and brushing the pass in a way that's closer to a lineman but backed off, so he will play pass coverage, some cover linebackers or cover running backs and tight ends from the linebacker spot. At 6'3", that's important too, to cover those taller positions at the tight end positions. I would go after him. After having watched him play some in Cincinnati, obviously because Houston's in the American, I wonder if he's looking for like big blue blood type program. But he's not a guy that I feel like he's from Cincinnati and looking to leave. So if he's looking to get out of his hometown, like you got to throw him an offer. And then the other one literally hit the portal on Tuesday night. My other pie in the sky guy is Bobby Taylor. Corner from Texas A&M. Now, he's a 6'1" guy. It's exactly the type of body like you're looking for: long, lean, futuristic NFL-style corners. Only redshirt. I mean, he's only at A&M for 1 year and he redshirted, so he's got 4 years of eligibility left. He left very suddenly. Legitimately, he put in for the portal on the 18th. On the 16th, he was tweeting about, so everyone's heard the story at this point about Ralph Yarl, the awful thing that happened. He got shot in the head over the weekend, right? But looked like he's going to survive, and he had this dream to go to A&M as an engineering person, right? And just as recently as over the weekend, Bobby Taylor was tweeting what can I do to help get this kid to A&M's campus? He was that invested in what they were doing there literally last weekend. And that was the 16th that tweet was, right? And then the 18th is the transfer portal. So I don't know what happened in between. What I do know is his high school tape, his spring ball tape, his spring practice clips, his highlights online. This kid is a 6'1", ball hawk, great hands, great corner, would be a great get. And he's from Katy, Texas. Dana, call him now. He's in the portal. There's nothing illegal. Do it now. I think that you got to at least, again, put the ball in the kid's court and make him turn you down, because you're giving that kid a chance to play in his hometown. You're bringing him back home. And he's a good football player. He was not leaving A&M because he couldn't play in the SEC. You got to bring him in. Anyway, that's one I feel like that just happened. One of the reasons we're recording late is because it just happened late. And I feel like, man, that would be a big one. Now, some of what I call snags, guys I would assume if you offered, you might do a little bit of coaxing, but you could pretty quickly convince to come to campus. I'm going to start with Landon Watson. He is a defensive lineman, like an edge type guy, originally from, I think it's Hutto, Round Rock area, Central Texas. But he's a 2-year guy, but played in just 3 games while at TCU, but was a crazy high ranked high school recruit. He's a rush in at a high school, and he's gained like 30-ish pounds to get up to 6'3", 260. But again, out of high school, he's a 4-star kid with offers to LSU, Notre Dame, Tennessee, a bunch of big time places. Chose TCU, hasn't gotten to play there, wants to come play somewhere. Can I introduce you to Sac Ave, Landon Watson? So that's one. Jackson Bailey is a Louisiana Monroe transfer. Originally started at Arizona, hard hitting, 6'2", 240-pound linebacker, right? Like a traditional, like 2004 type linebackers, right? But I do think he has some limitations in the pass game. So he's like a true box linebacker, like a Mike linebacker, won't leave the tackle box kind of guy, in my opinion of watching him at Louisiana Monroe tape. But he's from Red Oak, Texas. That's the DFW area. And I think you could convince him to come to Houston. Obviously, it's like a 4.5-hour drive, but it's in state. You'd be playing at TCU every other year. And like you're playing at Waco every other year. Like you're playing people close to home for him, right? Last, and I think this might be the snaggiest of all snags, is Ajani Carter. If that name sounds familiar, it's because he started at North Shore. He's a 6-foot, 195-pound DB. I think he might be like a box DB, even like a down low safety, a short yardage safety. They might eventually grow into a coverage linebacker. But he went from North Shore to Utah State. And I think Houston's a great excuse for him to come home and play ball, right? Like frankly, if Houston could offer like the best 10 players in North Shore every year, we'd be okay. And I might maybe 5 and go to Katy for a few and spread it out. But North Shore is a very good football program, right? And so I would absolutely bring this kid back home so you can get some little home magic going with it. And I think he's the kind of kid that if you found it looked like Utah State was trying to pull him out of the box a lot and away from the line of scrimmage. And I wonder if he's actually, just from his aggression and physicality, more of an upfront kind of guy that just has to grow into his body, put on a few more pounds. So he's listed as safety. He may end up being a linebacker as I see it, or maybe some sort of a hybrid. But I think the kid belongs back in Houston. Tell me what you think. Tell me at Painsworth 512 PAINSWORTH 512 on Twitter, Instagram, and all of your social media handles. We have to talk all thing Houston Cougar football, basketball, baseball team, kind of on a roll right now. Transfer portal, the Big 12 movement, all the kinds of things. You can find me again at Painsworth 512 PAINSWORTH 512 on Twitter, Instagram, and all of your social media handles. Thank you so much for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. We appreciate you listening in each and every day. Tomorrow, we're hoping to get into some more. First of all, we're hoping there's some movement that we can talk about. But also, we may talk more on the football front and hope maybe there's some more Big 12 news. We will see. That will be tomorrow. Friday, we may get some baseball talk going as well. We got to talk about Corey Julks. I mean, the Incredible Julks is killing it at the major league level as well. So all fun the rest of the week, I promise. And the next week, maybe even some on Friday, we start getting ready to send off some Houston Cougars in the NFL draft. So every day, listen to us, please, for all things Houston Cougars. If you're looking for a second listen of the day, I'm going to recommend, at this point, I'm going to recommend going to Locked On NFL Draft. They're talking about all our guys, Clayton Tune, Tank Dell, Cougar-friendly podcast. Locked On NFL Draft talks about the NFL Draft every day year-round. So make sure to check them out for your second listen of the day. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On Cougs. Locked On Cougs is a proud member of Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.